p.m. Let's call the meeting to order, please. Madam Clerk, Deputy Clerk.
Board Member Galvin. Here. Board Member Keys. Here. Board Member Bieneme. Here. Board Member Desilme. Here. Chairman Joseph.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, who's going to help us with Pledge of Allegiance? You want to do it? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Approval of last minutes from January 12th.
Second.
Approval of minutes moved by Vice Mayor Desilme, seconded by Board Member Galvin. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item passes 5-0.
Okay, now, Mr. Manager, I believe you say you want the Executive Director reports.
Yes.
Is it?
At this time, I'd like to move the Executive Director's report to discuss the grand jury report on CRAs. And I'd like to call Mr. Don Horn, Chief Assistant State Attorney, to the podium to speak on the grand jury report and give us a summary of the grand jury report.
You don't look any different from the last 10 years. That's good.
Good evening. My name's Don Horn, as indicated. I'm the Chief Assistant State Attorney for Administration, Dade County State Attorney's Office. One of the other functions I hold is I'm General Counsel to the Miami-Dade County Grand Jury. I'm not sure how much information you want, and I'm limited in how much information I can give you because anything that went on inside the grand jury room is confidential information. But I understand that you all have had the benefit of receiving the copy of the grand juror's report, and if I can just kind of give you some background on how we end up with these reports. As you're probably aware, the folks who end up on the grand jury are just called from the same jury pool panel that regular folks get called down for, and after we get them impaneled, they come up with various suggestions and topics for investigations. They vote and decide what topic they want to investigate, and then they come up with their investigation topic and eventually issue a report such as you see here. There was an intentional decision in the preparation of the grand jury report not to identify any specific CRAs, with the exception of, I think, one that was actually outside of our county, and that was intentional. So everything that's in here is not for every CRA. There were issues and problems that the grand jury felt required some changes. And as you see from the couple dozen of recommendations there, they have a wide range of areas that they thought were problematic for them, and they came up with recommendations on ways that they think things could be done better. One of the most important areas for them was the lack of citizen participation on most of these boards. They felt that since this was taxpayer money that was being used, particularly for some of the larger CRAs that have been around with millions and millions of dollars, that it was significantly important that there be some involvement from folks who live in those communities, preferably somebody who also has got some type of expertise in the area relating to CRAs. One of the other concerns they had was, although there is, again, county money that is also being contributed to the CRA, for the most part, there is no county participation with the exception, I believe, of the Miami Beach CRA, which now has a Dade County Commissioner sitting as one of its members. I understand from speaking to your attorney briefly before we got started that you guys are probably going to be the first ones up to the bat with the county. And I know as a result of a meeting I attended for one of their committee a week ago, that they've also got some plans to get more involved in this process. And some of the recommendations that we have included therein, they have indicated they're going to be moving forward with, particularly as it relates to the possibility of having commission members possibly be appointed or having appointees to the CRA boards, and that possibly may be part and parcel of any agreement to any request for extensions or anything else that folks may be going down there soliciting the county for. Of course, one of the things that folks always are concerned about was the money, and there were concerns about for some of the CRAs, monies that had been spent with little to show for it. But again, we didn't get into any specifics in terms of naming projects or CRAs, but again, that was a concern, and one of the things that we felt needed to be viewed a little bit more closely, and the expenditures of funds. One of the concerns, as raised in the report, the commissioners have the ability to approve the budgets, and oftentimes budgets are already being spent for the new fiscal year before the county even has made its approval process. So again, that's something that we thought needed to be corrected. The grand jury also had a concern about the apparent practice where folks may be making decisions where it appeared to the grand jury somebody's got a conflict of interest. And again, as lawyers, that's a crucial concern of ours, and sometimes people don't do better because they don't know better. And so therein is what led to our recommendation that everyone be required to go through and actually receive training on ethics and conflicts of interest, in hopes that such actions were not part and parcel of what was going on in terms of the decision-making process from the CRAs, who was getting awards, who were receiving grants, and pretty much just trying to have a process in place that these folks sitting out here says, oh yes, we understand we've got a grant program, and here's the policies and processes in place, as opposed to, I like this guy, he's my friend, I want to do something for him, which, as you see from the report, were some of the things that the grand jury got the sense was going on. The Florida Redevelopment Association was one of the areas that the grand jurors got educated on, as you see there in the report, and based on the information in the report, the recommendation is that folks who are on CRAs would benefit from being members of that organization, because based on the information the grand jury received, and that is reflected in the report, they do things like best practices and train folks specifically in ethics and conflicts of interest, and even you get everybody together in a room, they're doing the same thing. Oh, I didn't know you could do it that way. Yes, you can. And so it's an educational process for folks to be involved in. And again, the grand jurors thought, again, that would also be an appropriate use of the time for the folks who are serving on CRAs, which ultimately would benefit the overall operation of those CRAs. Most importantly, as you also saw from the report, there was a concern that although everybody in their initial filing of necessity, for the most part, are claiming slum blight, lack of affordable housing in slums, that a lot of the CRAs hardly did anything as it relates to affordable housing. So we end up with, okay, what happened to the affordable housing? So again, there were recommendations there, depending on how much money the CRA has coming in, that whether there should be a requirement for a specific percentage of money to be set aside that can only be used for affordable housing, to make sure that in the process of all the economic development and the streetscape and the landscape and making the sidewalks look nice and the streets look nice and the art going up on the side of the wall, that at the end of the day, you got folks who hopefully living in better living conditions, safer living conditions. And as we made one of the comments in the report, if we can find money in the CRA to have a place for dogs to play, then we ought to be able to find money in CRA so folks can have a better place to live. So that pretty much, I think, sums up the general areas we have for the report. If I can, I'd be willing to answer any questions that I'm lawfully able to answer. But again, I appreciate the invitation, and we tell the grand jurors all the time, you choose your topic, you issue your report, and the whole aim of this is you want to try and make things better for the citizens and residents of Miami-Dade County. And this was the area they chose. We're hoping at the end of the day, between the 14, I believe, CRAs that we've got here in this county, that this will be a better place for all of us. The CRAs will operate better, we'll have more efficient use of the monies, and our citizens and residents will benefit.
Now, of course, this report is not specific to our CRA. It's all the CRAs within the county.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And again, there is no one size fits all, because some issues we saw with CRA number 3 didn't apply to CRA number 6. Some of the things we saw with CRA number 7 didn't apply to CRA number 2. But there are things in here that we think everybody can benefit from.
And as far as residents' participation in the boards,
Yes.
I mean, are they referring to the actual board,
Yes,
like
sir.
we here,
Yes, sir.
not the advisory board?
No, sir. No. Actual voting member on the CRA board itself. They will
And-
have as much power as each of you.
And they are highly recommending that
Absolutely.
the CRAs do include the residents.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And even with a recommendation, again, that they have specialized expertise in some of the areas that would be beneficial. And again, that's not anything new. So a lot of these recommendations have been done. There's precedent for it in other types of boards, other type of authorities, and I think we actually footnote some of those in that particular area of the recommendation.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Horn?
When you talk about specialized expertise, is that just up to the board what we think is specialized? I mean, or have you come up with a package, like a degree, 3 years experience in the field?
Let me see if I can find that specific recommendation, but
Because
no,
I was
it would,
looking, and I just named off a few things like architecture, planning, et cetera, but I wondered if it was
not anything that was written in stone, and basically what it was, a recommendation was, on page number 9 of our report, we recommend that civilian appointees, well, to the grand jury's report, not my report, we recommend that civilian appointees to CRAs shall be knowledgeable in one of the following fields: architecture, finance, construction, land use, or other education or professional experience in the area of community redevelopment. So you guys could come up with your own standard rules, guidelines with this, some other areas that you think might be even more important. And if you want to add a year to it, we want you to have at least 3 years experience, but at least have some criteria, so you just don't pick some Joe off the street, but actually have someone who actually will be a benefit because, hey, I've got experience in this area, and I think there's something wrong with this bid. There's no way in the world. Yeah, so. Yeah.
Any other comments,
Thank you.
questions? No?
Thank you, Mr. Horn, for being here tonight, and to the State Attorney's Office for convening the grand jury and going all through the work that you all did.
You're very welcome.
It's very appreciated.
You're very welcome.
Your report wrapped up with about 20 different recommendations on
Yes.
how to improve CRAs.
Yes, sir.
Some of those are out of this body's control because
Absolutely.
there's state legislature
Yes.
changes that might need to be made. Some of those are county
County
commission
commission, yes,
changes
sir.
that might need to be made. But then there were about 10 that would theoretically fall under the purview of this CRA body. Do you believe or do you recommend that the North Miami CRA adopt those 10 recommendations that the Grand Jury Commission recommended?
The grand jury's strong recommendation would be that anything within the purview of the specific CRA, that they would adopt the recommendations, because we believe that it, again, would lead to more efficient, more effective operation of those CRAs, probably better for the citizens and residents who live in the area to kind of say, okay, I can go along with that. And again, as it relates to getting citizen participation, at least we've bought into the process because we've been part of the process instead of all the electeds telling us this is what we're going to do, and we've actually got no say-so in this. But yes, I think the grand jurors would strongly recommend that anything within your purview, we hope that you would go ahead and put into effect those recommendations.
Thank you.
And the county has indicated that they're going to do the same thing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Horn. I mean, I would like to say we'd like to see you more often, but you from the state attorney's office.
Yes, I had to leave the office about 4:30 to get here. I don't leave my office at 4:30. Yeah, but thank you all. I'll pass the information on to the state attorney.
All right, thank you, Dan. Okay, I guess the one agenda item that we have is resolution to approve the proposed amendment to the CRA. And we have RMA here. So this is the time for the presentation.
Yes, sir. We have Kevin here from RMA, and yes,
Do you mind if I read the resolution?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, agenda item number 1. A resolution of the chairman and board members of the North Miami Community Redevelopment Agency approving the amendment to CRA Redevelopment Plan 2016, recommending approval of the amendment to CRA Redevelopment Plan 2016 to the City of North Miami as the governing body of the North Miami Community Redevelopment Agency, authorizing the executive director to take any and all actions necessary to facilitate the approval of the amendment to CRA Redevelopment Plan 2016 by the City of North Miami and Miami-Dade County, and providing an effective date.
Good evening, Kevin Crowder with RMA. Nice to see you all again. We're here to go through the plan and the different funding option comparisons. Really just going to touch on the highlights of the plan. We've presented the plan and its contents to you several times. But just a reminder, the scope of work for RMA was to do the analysis, look at the background, look at the prior plans that the city and the CRA have done, to look at the potential TIF revenue, draft the plan update, and then move into and through the adoption phase of the CRA plan, both here at the city and through the county's approval process. One of the things in our discussions with the county that's come up going back to when we began this process, and has continued recently with our most recent meetings with the county, was one of the first things they guided us was to look as a precedent to the Miami Beach extension that was done in 2014. And the main things they said was, look at a plan, tell us what you're going to do, how much it's going to cost, and return the balance of the tax increment to the taxing authorities, the city and the county. More recently, the question was asked at the last CRA board meeting, but in our most recent meetings with the county, they have raised that we should expect the county to request placing a county commissioner or their representative on the North Miami CRA board. And we can expect some sort of discussion of limitations on administrative expenses for the CRA. Your administrative expenses have come down significantly already and are in a low range for the CRA. And then one of the other things that we can expect that would be part of the negotiation of the interlocal agreement would be performance measures of some sort, that looking at a 5 to 7 year time frame on what have you done what you said you were going to do, and identifying what are those triggers that we can put in place that clearly show the county that yes, the CRA has done what it said it's going to do and the full extension would be granted. We can expect several of the other things that have come up in the grand jury report will be other elements of the discussion with the county. And so once we get through the approval tonight, we'll move into the phase of the back and forth on the terms of the interlocal agreement between the city and the county, which will be back before you for discussion and input, et cetera, as we go through that process. Just real quick to go through the plan, just a reminder, the plan is broken into 5 areas: economic development, public improvements and infrastructure, housing and residential development, transportation, transit and parking, and then redevelopment support, those items that support those first 4 strategy areas. The economic development goals: downtown North Miami, a vibrant, active downtown. The commercial corridors, working with your partners at the state level, at the MPO level, on really improving the aesthetics of these commercial corridors, working with the private property owners in these corridors to enhance their properties. Those target commercial uses, those clusters, this is where that music industry opportunity that we see out there currently in Dade County, that you're better positioned than any other community to capitalize on, would fit. Using that to then use culture as not just, and things like MoCA, but all of your cultural assets are not just cultural assets. Use them as economic assets and economic development assets for the CRA and for North Miami. And then also repositioning North Miami in the marketplace itself. The public improvements and infrastructure is those commercial corridor right-of-way improvements and the neighborhood improvements. Housing and residential development. That healthy mix of affordable workforce, market rate, and mixed income housing, and where the CRA is able to react to market conditions as they change through the 29 years of the CRA extension. I always point to the Miami Beach CRA and the different things it did at different points in its life to deal with affordable housing based on the other things that were happening with housing in Miami Beach, which leads into goal number 9, which is development, expansion, and renovation of affordable housing in North Miami. Working with the city, you're an entitlement city, you receive other funding sources for affordable housing. So seeing where the CRA's role fits to support those initiatives to maintain and grow the stock of affordable housing throughout the 29 years of the extension. Transportation and parking. The transportation and transit systems. This may be local circulators, this will be your connectors, and this is also that Tri-Rail Coastal Link opportunity that is coming with the station at 125th Street and the FEC corridor, and making those connections within your community. These may be bicycle facilities, these may be local circulators, things that connect to that game-changing project which changes the market access for your community in that commuter rail that will run from downtown West Palm Beach to downtown Miami with, I believe, about 20 or 22 stops. And also that efficient and attractive parking as an element of your redevelopment and your revitalization. And then the 3 areas of the plan that support those first 4 areas are land development regulations, making sure that they are consistent between the CRA plan, the efforts of the redevelopment agency with the city land development regulations, land acquisition and disposition, identifying those opportunities throughout the life of the extension for the CRA to participate, and also economic incentives that may be public-private partnerships, components of those. It may be affordable housing. It may be economic incentives for private sector assistance, developer assistance in providing public infrastructure as they come in and do their projects. With that, that's a summary of the 14 goals that are in your plan. The bottom line, our sort of elevator speech, what does this plan do? It enhances downtown and the commercial corridors. It exposes, it promotes that music industry opportunity that is right there, and we really feel strongly about that opportunity that is there right now. It invests in the public-private partnership opportunities for many different priorities that you have. It capitalizes on that Tri-Rail Coastal Link, commuter rail, and it preserves the neighborhood character. That would be the big picture summary of what this redevelopment plan does. Now, how do you do this? You have to be able to pay for it. You have to be able to implement the plan over the 29 years. So what we've done is we've provided you a comparison of funding methodologies. We have 3 here. The first one is the current terms of the interlocal agreement that expires on October 1st. Now, these are not terms that we believe the city or the county would necessarily be receptive to, especially the county. I think the county has looked at wanting a change in the TIF, partly because the cost of implementing the plan is below the amount of TIF that this would create. And so they're looking for us to tell us how much does the plan cost and fund that and return the balance to the taxing authorities. But the current, just so that you'll get a comparison with the numbers, the current boundaries, 95% of the TIF, city and county, is collected. The county portion that is generated west of Biscayne Boulevard is refunded to the county as a line item in your budget each year. And so that's not retained by the CRA. The CRA does retain 95% of the city taxes generated on the increment on both sides throughout the CRA, and 95% of the new taxes, the increment generated east of Biscayne.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Kevin, who at the county said that the current setup that we have would not be something they would be in favor of?
It's back in our initial meetings with the Office of Management and Budget. They were looking for us to return more increment revenue to the taxing authorities.
George Fernandez with the county is in that department?
Yes. Yes, sir.
I spoke with him today, and he said he hasn't reviewed any of these breakdowns of finances and doesn't have an opinion.
I think what he's probably talking about, Commissioner or Councilman, is the 50% and the modified boundary options are probably, I think those are the two that he hasn't really reviewed or determined an opinion on. And I say that because of those initial conversations we had with him, where he did indicate, tell us how much the plan costs and return the balance to the taxing authorities. And I think that they viewed the current terms as generating more TIF than the CRA would need to retain. So I believe, and we can confirm with George, but I believe that the ones he's talking about are really the other two, the 50% and the boundary modification. The second one is, rather than the CRA receiving 95% of the TIF generated, would be for the existing boundaries to be maintained, and the TIF that accrues to the CRA be set at 50%. State law allows for CRAs to receive TIF in a range of 50 to 95%. So this option would put it at the lower end of that. So it would return 50% of the TIF generated to the city and to the county as well throughout the existing boundaries of the CRA. The other funding methodology would be a modification to the boundaries. This boundary would eliminate, as defined in the legal description, the Munisport site, the Solomia Biscayne Landing site. Include the current boundaries west of Biscayne Boulevard, as well as the small enclave that's in the CRA down in the San Souci area. In this case, this would be a traditional 95% CRA district. It would be the boundary modification that would eliminate the Solomia Munisport area, and 95% of the increment generated in those new boundaries would be remitted to the CRA for implementation of the plan.
Excuse me, Kevin.
Yes.
Can you go back to the previous slide? Can you give the board maybe some advantages, the pros and cons of each of them before we move forward? I don't want to get to the end and have you go back, but can you go over the pros and cons of the bottom two options that are available?
Sure. I think that when we look at these from a implementation of the plan, let me say the plan that we've developed for you is focused on the west side of the CRA. It's focused on downtown, it's focused on your commercial corridors, and then on your neighborhoods. When we look at these two different options, which I will tell you, we'll get into the numbers in a minute, but the two options generally fund about the same amount. They return about approximately the same amount to each of the two taxing authorities, and they provide the CRA within a 10% range of each other funding for the CRA to implement the plan. The difference would be that in the 95% district where you modify the boundaries and remove Solomia, you would be relying on the funding to the city general fund would come from the future growth in property tax from the Solomia site only, plus 5% of the future growth on the west side. 95% of the city property taxes generated on the increment west of Biscayne would be retained by the CRA. In the 50% of what's generated downtown, 7th Avenue, everywhere west of Biscayne would come to the CRA and 50% would go to the city. 50% of what's generated by Solomia would come to the CRA. 50% of what's generated by Solomia would go to the city. Our feeling and recommendation is, our preference is the 50% district, because our feeling is that it spreads the risk better for the CRA, for the city, and for the county. There's going to be things that are going to happen over a 29-year period that are going to be outside of the city's control. They're going to be outside of the CRA's control. They're going to be market forces. You saw this happen in 2009. Your CRA, regardless of the other history of the CRA, you know, your increment went from $8 million to $500,000. You had a severe disruption in the real estate market, but it didn't hit every location differently. And if we went back and really did a detailed analysis, we could probably see differences in those percentage changes in the real estate market between the property east of Biscayne, the property between Biscayne Boulevard and downtown, the property between downtown and I-95, and the property west of I-95. So those impacts are going to be different. And so there's no reason to believe that Solomia is not going to happen, but there are things that are outside of control. So if there is a hiccup at Solomia and you've used the 95%, the boundary modification, that's going to impact the amount of revenue accrued to the general fund from that increment. Whereas it might be vice versa. There could be a hiccup in the market that impacts the west side of Biscayne. It impacts the downtown markets, the West Dixie markets, the Northwest 7th Avenue real estate markets much more significantly than it impacts Solomia, and more, not waterfront, but almost, you know, and a different type of development. And in that case, the city would benefit still from the growth in the increment from Solomia, but the CRA would not necessarily receive enough funding to implement its plan. And so to us, the 50% keeping the existing boundaries spreads that risk between the east and the west side and all of the different elements of the CRA. Provides we think it's the most fiscally responsible for the city and the CRA as well as the county.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, go ahead.
And from the two plan, right, the boundary modification and the 50-50, and if I understand the major difference, it's like the general fund gonna have more money than the CRA. Is it correct?
The
boundary modification, right? When you calculate it, that's when more money gonna go to the CRA than the general fund.
Then the North Miami.
Then the 50-50, that's when more money gonna go to the general fund than instead of the CRA.
I believe that's correct. This graph shows you the three versions.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're both very close. Actually, let me go to this one. Actually, it's the opposite. It's, if you look at the first column, now this is in 2016 dollars. A 50% district would provide $130 million
No,
to.
give me the detail about the boundary modification.
And the boundary modification would be 137 million.
Mhm. That's when it's about the same, the different, that's when you're gonna have more money to the general fund than the CRA.
I'm not sure I follow your question.
The boundary modification, right? If you're looking at the numbers.
Which is the
50%,
95%.
Yeah, within the 95%.
Yes,
With the boundary modification, that's when without the Solomia,
correct.
right? The only difference that we're gonna have, it's more money to the general fund than the CRA.
The CRA would still receive more money,
Uh-huh.
but the CRA would receive more money because the CRA also receives funding from the county.
I understand that.
Right.
But that's the only difference, right?
Right.
Okay. Why you recommend the 50-50 instead of the boundary modification when it's about the same in terms of numbers?
Because our recommendation there is based on both of the methodologies will pay for implementation of the plan. The 50%, we feel the risk to the CRA and the risk to the city's general fund is less with the 50-50 rather than the boundary modification, because you're spreading the risk geographically through a larger geographic area and through more diverse types of real estate that are going to generate the TIF.
Yeah, but if Solemia doesn't move forward, that's the 50-50. That's not a good way to go. The 50-50 is good if Solemia are going to move forward, right?
Well, if Solemia doesn't move forward, the CRA will feel an effect in the 50-50 because it's receiving funds from that.
Okay.
If Solemia doesn't go forward with the boundary modification, the CRA would not feel that effect. The city general fund would feel all of that effect.
Yeah, we understand that.
Right. And so it's that risk is that is the reason that we're looking for the 50% rather than the boundary modification.
Okay.
To mitigate that risk, not just to the CRA, but also to the city general fund.
Yeah, but okay.
Are you getting toward the end? No? You still have
Yes,
more
sir.
to-
I can just real quick show you the, where we get, this is the gross numbers of what would be generated through a comparison of the current methodology, the 50%, the modified boundaries, and the CRA to each of the three agencies.
We don't have this slide, do we? No,
No.
I don't see this.
This slide would be, slide is a summary of three.
Oh, yeah,
of the-
yeah, I have it. It's right here.
In the net present value, you can see the 50% increment to the CRA is $205 million. The modified boundary, the net present value is $195 million over the life of the extension. The city's general fund would receive between $129 million or $137 million over that same time. But the CRA would receive between $195 and $205 million. What we have here are the estimates on the implementation of the CRA plan, which ranges between $160 and $195 million. So at $109 in 2016 dollars. So $195 million plan implementation can be accomplished with either of these methodologies while still returning significant increment to the city and the county. The 50% gives you a little bit more of a buffer also for price shifts or cost shifts, a 5% allowance, in addition to spreading the risk.
Okay, I seem to have a slide that the other members don't. The aggregate new tax increment revenues. This one. If you have it, can you project it?
It was what? Email, how did they get it? They print it out?
That's the yeah, this one, yeah, right there.
Okay.
This is a modified version of that slide.
You see this hand? Good.
I don't have that either.
Okay, I think we should have printed out, I guess. I don't
We're
know.
still trying to figure that out in North Miami. Do we make copies for everybody, or do we just?
No, it's just when they present the plan.
Well, I guess I can.
This was the version the mayor, the chairman actually, they printed out his version that we emailed to everybody, I believe it was last week. He just.
This is very different than what's being shown tonight.
It's the same, it's the same.
This one is the aggregate. This one is just the aggregate new tax increment
Okay.
from 17 to 45.
But how come we
It
did not
shows.
have that document? We never had that.
You say you emailed it?
We emailed to everyone last week. We emailed that out to everyone.
Talking about the plan, not the
That.
detail.
Yeah,
I never got, okay, I never got it.
But,
Tax
Mr.
increment
Mayor,
revenues.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. The dollar amounts that I'm looking at here, we've just watched two slides being shown back and
It's
forth, back and
different.
forth. The dollar amounts on the box chart is way different than what I'm looking at here. So I'm confused as to what I'm supposed to be considering. who's working the slide projector right now? You?
Yes, sir.
So if you'll go back to those, that
Yeah, this
slide right
slide.
there is significantly different than what has been handed to us right now.
Also,
No,
the
it's
year
not.
is
It's
different.
not. It's not different. If you allow me, if you look at on the actual the different options, like the current methodology is 34,000 for the
34
general
million.
fund. Yeah, 34 million, right? And if you look at this page, you will see the same numbers.
Okay.
Wow.
The only thing that we've added to the
There is
one on
one
the
on a
screen is we
different
added
table.
the line at the bottom which shows a no CRA alternative.
And this goes up to 2045. This is the next 3 years.
Yeah, we got it now.
It's a 2045, 2046 fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay. So, wait a minute. Well,
So at the 50, for the 50%, the North Miami General Fund, the aggregate would be 341 million
Yes, sir.
by 45, 46.
Oh, yes, over the 29 years.
Yeah. And as opposed to the modified boundary, where it would be 358 million,
Yes, sir.
but which carries more risk than the 50%.
Yes, sir.
So it's a matter of taking the risk, make a little bit more money toward the end, or less risk and make a little bit less money.
Yes, sir, and they're both within a 5%,
Yeah.
which would be a reasonable margin of error either
Okay.
way between them.
But both risk is based on the market, whether it's Solemia or the 95% from the west side. It's the same thing.
No, I guess what he's pointing out, and that's what most people have been pointing out, is that if Solemia go belly up, we'll end up losing more because we're taking more risk with them, being in the
Solemia.
Yeah.
I understand that, but at the same time, if the market went down and so big, that means it's going to be a big risk with Solemia. Then, if we have the 95% and boundary modification,
Well, if you would still go down as well.
I understand that, but
Because if there was a market risk that impacted Solemia,
Yeah.
it's gonna have as much a market risk, most likely, if not greater, on other areas of the CRA.
yeah, but I understand that when you're talking about one specific project, then 95% of the entire city, it may be up and down in different area.
let me ask a question, Kevin. As the consultant, you gave us your recommendation. How do I feel comfortable if I go otherwise with another plan? Because you're negotiating on our behalf with the county, but clearly you with the 50%. So as a commissioner or a board member, I feel like, I don't know, it's almost like, hey, you have to go with this because this is what's. I thought you was gonna come here and present two plans that equally you guys would have said these are the best plan for the city. Where you wouldn't give us this hand up versus, well, I'll go with this one versus that, because obviously, clearly you with the 50%, which I have some concerns about, which we shared, but obviously that's a whole different story. So if you're the one who are negotiating this with the county, how would I feel, how do I assure, or this board would assure that if we do pick one, you won't come back, or the county won't say, well, we like the other plan?
The county's waiting, the county's not looking to make a decision between the two plans. They're looking for this body to tell the county, here's the plan that we prefer, and our job is to go negotiate the interlocal agreement for you. Our preference, our professional recommendation, and our preference is we see less risk in the 50%. But once we get beyond that, whatever this body directs us to do is what we will go negotiate, because both of the options that we have presented to you are viable funding methodologies for the CRA plan that we have given.
Okay, can you give me some options, some pros with the 95%?
The pro is that you would be creating essentially a 95% CRA in the boundaries that your plan is focused on. Your plan is geared towards the west side of Biscayne. It's not geared towards, the plan is not a plan for Solemia, even though Solemia is in your boundaries. The plan is for Northwest 7th Avenue, downtown North Miami, 6th Avenue, West Dixie Highway. and really creating that growth and increment that hasn't happened on the west side of the CRA in the last 11 years. And your implementation of this plan will drive that increment and would be a benefit for the CRA.
Okay, my whole thing before this CRA came about many, many years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, the whole purpose in the community was, or I remember we were really pushing it. The idea was this was going to be a CRA that was supposed to help folks like my district, District 3, District 2, and part of District 1 to help the housing problem that we had. Grants was going to be available for homeowners. Obviously, that did not happen. And the feeling in the community is very mutual. If we do or we don't, because obviously over the last few years, we could say a lot we could say about the CRA. So I'm very, very cautious on the decision that I'm making tonight. I don't want us to be in the same predicament, because obviously to me the CRA really failed us.
And Councilman, I'm right there with you. We have that same view as the plan. We've given you a plan now that focuses on the areas that you're talking about. Our feeling is that and we weren't involved, but there's maybe a little bit of too much reliance on this project over here to fund everything else in the rest of the CRA, and maybe not enough focus on having effective strategies themselves on the west side of the CRA. So what I would tell you is I hope you can see this. Oh no, the slide. Can we get the slide back up on the screen? But what I tell you is what this shows you is it shows you the different, and we've refined this from the last time you saw it. But the green these are your 11 goals in your plan. The green are those elements that, for the most part, are the things that are going to generate tax increment. The items in red, things like affordable housing, public improvements, parking, neighborhood improvements, these are the items that themselves are not going to generate TIF. And then the ones that are in gold could go either way. Sometimes they'll generate TIF, sometimes they won't. I think one of the things that the grand jury report recognized is that what you've got to do in a CRA, and what you've got to do especially in your CRA, is in order to get the TIF up to fund those items that are in red, you have got to do economic development. You've got to focus on economic development and get the tax growth happening, and then be able to implement the projects. I think that one of the concerns that the grand jury had when it came to the citizen participation especially was making sure that the CRA feet are held to the fire in doing those projects throughout the life, and not just spending all of the TIF as it gets generated, which is part of why the county has told us, tell us what it's going to cost, and then remit the balance to the city. So this plan, Commissioner, I think, and hopefully this graph shows you that you do these elements. You'll have a check-in with the county, some performance measures in these early sort of green and yellow phases to be able to fund those projects that are your priorities throughout the life of the CRA.
Now, Kevin, I mean, you've been our advocate at the county for quite some months now, and you've been going back and forth, feeling the pulse of the county vis-a-vis this renewal process. And of course, you feel very strong about the 50-50, and you've pretty much made your case as to why, you're recommending it. Is part of your recommendation based upon the inclination of the members downtown, or do you think, because we need to be in sync with them. We don't want to, the reason why I guess we're asking so many questions is because we want to make sure that we make a decision where we would be in sync with what they would expect us. So is there one particular one that they would definitely refute if we should choose it? We're looking at the current, like let's say the current methodology now. It clearly shows that we would be making much more money, right?
Correct.
But it is my understanding that they're not entertaining us maintaining that.
I don't believe so, sir, no. I think that the current methodology does not conform to the guidelines that they have given us in funding the CRA at a level that allows for implementation of the plan and returning the balance of the revenue to the taxing authorities. The current methodology would generate a lot more revenue for the CRA than is needed to implement the plan,
Mhm.
and would lead to, I think, criticisms that are raised about pet projects and other things, in just finding things to spend on in the CRA rather than focusing on the things that are gonna drive redevelopment. And so the county has not given us a preference between the 50% and the boundary modification. We would advocate equally strongly on your behalf at the county for whichever one that you as a body choose. Both methodologies will provide for full implementation of the plan that we have developed for you.
Now, second question, it is my understanding also that they are renew it partially for the first 5 years, contingent upon us realizing at least one big project, right?
Yes, sir.
Is
There
that-
will be, they'll be looking for some sort of performance measure, and we don't know what that is yet. That'll be part of the next phase, and you'll be involved significantly as we go through those negotiations in identifying what that performance measure or trigger will be. But similar, and I think your attorney can speak more to the history, but it's something that you had in place with your CRA before, when the CRA was first created, was a 5-year review determination of if there was.
Well,
an
second part
extension
of
available.
my question is if, well, not if at the end of the meeting we will have, chosen, one option, and after we do so, is that option valid for the first 5 years, at which time we would be able to renegotiate, or is it the same one that's gonna go throughout the next?
It would be the
And
same
if-
option. What we would be looking in terms of a performance measure would be something very definable, something very, very clear, not subjective, something that says, yes, we met this, no, we didn't meet it, and it's just, it provides for the extension of those years. It wouldn't change the methodologies, it wouldn't require an amendment to the interlocal.
No.
It would just be a condition in the interlocal that determines, was that condition met or not?
Okay.
One other thing that in our conversations with the county that I just kind of want to give you, and especially I think in the context of the grand jury report, as well as some things happening outside of Miami-Dade County, is, I've been involved in CRAs in Miami-Dade County since 1994. And there's been ups and downs, there's been battles between some CRAs and the county, but the relationship between the CRAs and Miami-Dade County is very good right now. It's very different than what we're seeing between CRAs and counties in many other counties in the state. And especially this CRA, I think, Rasha can tell you the comments that came from the county's Economic Prosperity Committee last week when the CRA's budget was up for approval. But we've been working very well with the county and in partnership. And I think the county sees that the city and the CRA are moving forward in partnership. And they, as much as we are, and I think this is important for whatever, to reinforce just how much we will advocate for whichever methodology you choose, this is the CRA plan, the CRA extension, the CRA interlocal that will become the model for any other CRA in Miami-Dade County. They will stop, I believe they will stop referring to that Miami Beach CRA as the one to look at and start directing people to look at this one once we are finished, because there are some unique conditions with the Miami Beach one.
Okay. My last question. I don't want to conclude without addressing to my attorney with a lot of knowledge. Yeah,
I have lots of questions.
yeah. I just want a final comment from you. Before we go to the next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I kind of feel like I'm back in time 11 years, except I had a lot more hair and Councilman Galvin had darker hair. We had a similar negotiation with the county back in '05 when the CRA was created, and we wanted 30 years. Now we're looking for 29 years. And Mr. Krapp, who was the executive director here some time ago, was at that time at the county as the assistant county manager who negotiated the interlocal agreement. And they had those milestones in there for us, for this CRA. They gave us 5 years as an initial period of time in which to create a project and to issue debt either through a bond or some sort of loan, which the CRA did, which got us a 10-year extension, which is why we're here today. And I've been in the meetings with Mr. Crowder and Rasha and your executive director downtown, and the county is coming to the table. They are bringing forth some of the items in the grand jury report as items which will be in our interlocal agreement, and we've embraced that. I mean, I think everyone's looking for more accountability, more transparency, but I did bring with me this advisory committee handbook, and I think we're probably one of the only CRAs that has a citizens advisory committee, and your chairman's here and one of the members. And that committee met last night, and they were all there. There was a full quorum. And they
I'm
voted
pretty sure
unanimously
for the
to-
for the
to
50-50.
push this, to advise you that they want to see this plan move forward. But we had something, we had a logo on here, it was called HOT, which was open, honest, and transparent. And I think that that's what the county is looking for. I think that's what you're looking for. I just did want to say a couple things with respect to the two TIF recommendations. And again, as Mr. Crowder said, whichever recommendation you all task us with negotiating, we're there, we're your advocates. So that's what we're going to negotiate with the county. At the end of the day, while some of the numbers show a disparity, you know, if you do the 50%, there's more money going to this, less money going to the general fund, I think about $10 million. If you do the 95% with the boundary modification, there's less. At the end of the day, the total amount is going to be capped by the county anyway. We're going to have a plan that's going to say whether it takes 100 and let's say 75 million to implement. Once you hit that, that's it. Then the money starts coming back to the city, all of it. With the 95% plan, right now that's sort of like the reverse of what we have right now. So on the west side, the county gets all its money back. They get 100% of the 95% that comes into your redevelopment trust fund from the west side as a rebate every year. So what you'll be asking them to do is give you 100% of that money, as opposed to the 50% plan where you're only asking them to give 50% of it. So instead of asking them for everything back, it's 50%. Whether it reduces the risk across the geographical area or not, as Kevin has said, if there's a downturn in the market, it's going to affect the entire city. It's not just going to affect Solomia or the west side. The issue is, though, if you're at 95% on the west side and you have a market downturn, you can't increase the TIF to take care of that. You can't go up from 95%. You can only go down from 95%. If you're at 50% and you have a market issue and you're in the middle of your 20th year and you're implementing certain projects, you could go to the county and get an increase from the 50% to say 55 or 60 to adjust for that. I'm not saying that that's, a reason to do it, but I mean, it's something to think about.
Okay.
I'm very excited that at this point, we've gotten this far. We've got a very good plan, a project-specific plan, which I think you're all in favor of the plan. I've spoken to most of you, or I've heard you speak at the meetings. The issue with the TIF and the, which sort of methodology you would like to see, the 95% with the boundary change or the 50%, that's up to you all.
Okay.
And whichever one you decide, we'll be more than happy to advocate it downtown.
Thank you. I believe
Mr. Chair,
you wanna. I think Councilwoman wanted to go first. Go ahead.
Okay. We've gone over these figures. I have a question. I wish that the public had those charts that we went over this week. They're very informative. I wish the public would have had them, or they've been online, so people could see what we're talking about. On these handouts where you have I think this is what you were talking about. You would break down total tax authority revenue, North Miami General Fund and Miami-Dade General Fund. So, like on the 50% tax district, you have a really large number of $7,888,000 and Miami-Dade $4,640,000. I don't see how that relates to the numbers before that. What are those numbers?
What that number includes, say in the line 2016, what the $7,736,000 is, that is the $830,000 from the far left column generated to the North Miami General Fund from the increment, 50%, or I'm sorry, from the new increment, plus what you receive on the base year of the CRA. If you, the CRA's base year value was $870 million. So you and the county each receive 100% of your property taxes on your millage against that. And so that number includes both that's the total amount accruing to the general fund from the CRA area, base and increment.
Couple other questions. In this amendment, you're asking us to vote on amendment this evening, Mr. Selkowitz?
We're asking you to approve the amendment to the plan and pick one of the two TIF methodologies.
So 6.2 in this amendment, in the booklet we got, page 69, what chart is that? Because we're obviously not approving that, I don't believe.
No, this is an order of magnitude blend between the two different options, the boundary modification and the 50% that we ran. The resolution that you have before you directs a update to this page based on the methodology that you choose. The resolution would also direct a amendment to the legal description in this document if you were to choose the boundary modification.
Also, your plan, we discussed it, and I haven't had time to read this resolution, so I'm just zipping through it this evening. But you have a couple places where you are referring to revenue bonds, and we discussed there would not be revenue bonds. So if we vote on this amendment, we're actually authorizing revenue bonds.
The amendment does not authorize revenue bonds. All that the plan does is identify revenue bonds are a funding mechanism available to CRAs. The plan does not rely on revenue bonds to fund implementation of the plan, but it's a power that's delegated that's available under the CRA statute. But this amendment does not authorize or direct or anticipate.
But it's in there as one of, so, under 4.4 and I think 5.13, I don't know which paragraphs, I mean, it's talking about bonds. So do we
Right.
need to have that in there? I don't want someone to come back after I'm gone and say, oh, well, you approved bonds.
Only the voters can approve bonds,
Yeah.
No, not the CRA.
Not with the CRA. sir.
CRA.
That's
Mr.
the
Chairman?
problem.
Mr. Chairman, if I could speak to that. Whether or not it's in the plan or not, the statutes permit CRAs to issue revenue bonds. This CRA board does not have the unilateral power to issue revenue bonds. That is a power that was not delegated to this board. The city and the county have to approve any issuance of revenue bonds in the future.
But it's not, the citizens have no say whatsoever. It's the county and the
No, the
CRA
citizens
board.
do not have a say, and
Okay.
if the city was gonna issue a revenue bond, the citizens wouldn't have a say either. Only if it's pledging the ad valorem tax revenue does it go out to a referendum. And I would like to read the section, if you don't mind, of the resolution so we all understand. Section 2 says, the amendment to the CRA redevelopment plan in the form attached here 2 as Exhibit A is hereby approved and conformed to the board's decision as to revenue methodology and legal description. So what that means is, whichever TIF methodology this board approves, with or without the boundary modification, this resolution will conform the plan that goes to the county to that decision tonight.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're not approving any bonds or giving this board or future boards power to, go out.
It's just potential.
We would have been in a lot of trouble had we done bonds when the last board wanted to do that. We would have been broke. Okay, so we first have to decide on, I guess.
I have
we-
a question before.
Councilman,
And,
Councilman, is it you or Bien-Aimé first?
Yeah. And a question that I have, whichever method that we use tonight, after the first phase, like after the first 5 years, can we go back and change plan?
Well, the interlocal agreement would be, you would be determining the methodology for this process for the 29 years of the extension. That doesn't mean that in 5 years, in 10 years, at some point during that extension, you can always go back to the county and request amendments to the interlocal.
Okay, so that's my
Okay.
question. Okay.
Councilman Galvin?
Thank you.
Board member?
Kevin, I want to first revert back to something you brought up about the music industry and the city's positioning to capitalize on the music industry. That's interesting. What do you mean?
Okay. Let me see if I have, real quick, it in here. I should. But what it really means, no, it's not right there. What it means is, a similar thing happened when we were working in Oakland Park. And Terrell Fritz was part of that team as well. And Sharon McCormick, our Director of Business Attraction, they're the ones that did Oakland Park. And what happened in Oakland Park, and I think it's important just to give you that context, was RMA was in there to update their redevelopment plan. And so in the course of doing that, one of the analysis was, let's see what your existing clusters are. Let's see what you have here. We see what we see when we drive down the street, but we don't see what's behind those warehouses. We don't see what's in some of these buildings. And as Sharon and Terrell went through the business tax receipts and went through seeing what was really in Oakland Park, they started finding all of these uses that somehow related to the kitchen. 38 cabinet makers, knife sharpeners, linen companies, caterers, all these things that could make a connection to the kitchen. What they did was they came up with the brand simultaneously as we were finishing that redevelopment plan. They launched the Oakland Park Culinary Arts District. 2 weeks later, Funky Buddha Brewery from Boca, the owner was up at 2 in the morning trying to figure out what's he going to do for a Broward County expansion, and he came across a YouTube video of Sharon presenting the Culinary Arts District. Within a month, they had signed 20,000 square feet in what the city of Oakland Park had always wanted to be their downtown. It's got a 3,000 square foot tasting room. It's now grown to 40,000 square feet microbrewery. 6 more properties have turned over, all for culinary related uses. This is all in 3 years. 2 mixed use projects, so something similar. So here, as we came through here doing this plan, I've always known, and we've always known, that you've got elements of the music industry here. And it's mostly behind the scenes, it's mostly infrastructure. You have the places that musicians buy their gear. Space music, sim music, even though sim has all moved into space now. You have places that people service their gear, all of their musical equipment. You have schools, at least 3 that I know of, music schools here. You have Criteria Studios, the Hip Factory, which is up right at about 146th, technically across the boundary from the city, but still, this is as important a studio in American music history as the record plant, as Muscle Shoals. This is where Duane Allman and Eric Clapton recorded Layla, Hotel California, Aretha Franklin. Their first gold record was I Feel Good by James Brown.
Saturday Night Fever was done there. The Grease soundtrack was done there. Britney Spears did it last. I get it.
Yeah, and they've maintained that. You've had 14 other recording studios cluster around them in those warehouses in that industrial area up there. What's happened in the last 18 months? So you've got, let's call it, credibility in that industry. Everyone's coming here already for certain things, but it's sort of under the surface. One thing that's happened in the last 15 to 16 months is there were about 15 real performance venues in Dade County. I'm not talking about bars and lounges that have cover bands come in and it's not a place where someone with a folk singer with an acoustic guitar comes, but these are places where working musicians play, a very multicultural, diverse group of artists. Every night is different. What's happened is we now have 3 of those. 12 of those have closed in the last 15, 16 months. And they've closed. In the New Times, an artist, a booking agent, and guitarist in a working, very successful band wrote an article in New Times in September about, are we seeing the death of live music in Miami? And they attribute...
I've got a lot of other questions, so
we have to kind of wrap it up.
Here's the answer. There's a lot of people in the music industry looking for opportunity now because of the real estate pressures that have forced them out of downtown.
Okay.
And you have the credibility to capture onto that in North Miami, unlike anyone else.
To be continued. I like the CRA the way it is. When we instituted the CRA in 2005, the idea was that the money coming off this monster, beautiful project was going to rehabilitate the infrastructure of North Miami, which is incredibly aged, whether it's the bridges that cross our canals or the homes that are on our streets, to the sewer pipes that run below. I believed then and I believe now that it can be successful. So if all this money is now gonna come off of Solomia, and it's gonna come into the central and western parts of the city, that's gonna free up other money, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's gonna free up money from the North Miami City Council General Fund that can go wherever. So if we're currently spending $1 million on police officers, central and west, and that $1 million is now replaced by Solomia money, does not mean that we could take that 1 million and redirect it toward the east part of the city, which is not in the current CRA boundaries?
The money to the city general fund?
In other words, this, I'm taking off my CRA hat right now.
Yes.
I'm gonna be Councilman Galvin.
Right.
And I'm making up numbers, I'm making up dollar amounts. If the CRA is paying for all the cops, central and west, doesn't that then give more money? Doesn't the CRA's revenue stream benefit my east side district by freeing up money that's being spent currently central and west and allowing that to be spent on the east?
Well, you could not take, if you're talking about freeing up general fund money with CRA money on cops and freeing that money up for the east, you can't supplant your existing service level. You can do community policing and you can pay for police officers in the CRA, but it has to be community policing and it has to be enhanced services. It would have to be providing police officers within the CRA area over and above what you currently provide.
Okay.
It couldn't replace the funding.
All right.
Okay.
So we.
No, Mr. Mayor, I got a lot of questions.
No.
I'm
No.
sorry.
I just want to make a comment because it's almost the regular meeting time is coming up,
Right.
and from we've been over the CRA issue for a long time, and I believe that we've come to a time where we could make a decision as a body, because we have to be aware that the county has been waiting for us, and they are looking at what we are doing, whether we are really serious about moving forward.
Sure. Am I
with the
allowed
CRA.
to ask questions though?
No, it's okay. But I'm just saying to take, mention to take notice of the time so that we can move forward.
I'm very noticeable of the time.
Yeah.
And I'll rush through these questions as quickly as I possibly can. So if there's $4 million coming off the CRA in year 3, and those CRA dollars are going into the CRA,
Yes,
Solomia is part of the CRA.
yes.
Can CRA dollars be used in Solomia? If there's going to be a whole new community of people out there. They're going to need police, they're going to need parks, they're going to need water. Can we use CRA revenue at Solomia?
On things that are consistent with the plan.
Oh, okay, yeah, but I'm not
But
talking
if
about.
it's in the boundaries, yes.
Okay,
Yes, upon your approval as a board of those expenditures,
okay,
as long as it's in the plan
right.
and they're in the boundary, you could make that sort of approval.
Okay. Has anybody at the county told you specifically they will not approve a North Miami CRA plan that just renews the existing boundaries and funding levels?
I would say that's the message I got in our first conversations with George Fernandez and with the Office of Management and Budget.
Has he
Was that the-
specifically said he won't?
No, sir.
Okay.
But the parameters he has given us for an extension are beyond the current methodology does not conform to those parameters.
I spoke to him today. I'm as direct with you as I was with him earlier. I did not get the impression that we would not get renewed if we left it as long as we did something with the money that we're gonna bring in. I mean, our flaw is that we've had the CRA for 11 years, and point to one major thing we've done. There isn't one. I'm all for the money coming off of the CRA being used to rehab our western and central districts, which needed a whole lot more than my eastern district. And now my eastern people are gonna call me and go, Scott, how dare you? And I can tell them in all great honesty, but good news is that we now have more money from the North Miami City Council General Fund to spend in your area, because the CRA relieves the services being demanded from that you're currently paying for. Please, unless I'm totally getting this wrong, correct me.
No, the CRA is not going to be able to assume costs that the general fund is paying for in operations. They're going to be able to fund capital projects within
Okay,
the CRA.
new sidewalks.
Right,
So-
but they
so-
wouldn't be able to fund the existing police officers, they wouldn't be able to fund existing sanitation or code enforcement or any of those services. They could provide enhancements to those, they can provide maintenance to projects that have been built by the CRA, but not, they couldn't be used to fund any of the operational elements of the existing budget. The other thing that I think the county would do, if they did consider the current methodology to go forward, they would still cap the amount that came to the CRA. Because one of the two methodologies, the boundary modification would, today's dollars, 195 million. The 50%, today's dollars, 205 million. The current methodology in today's dollars would provide the CRA with $325 million. The county's going to say, you're only getting the $175 million it said the plan is going to
Okay.
create. So there would be some kind of cap still put in place through the interlocal agreement. That full amount would still not come to the CRA based on the guidance we've gotten from the
So
county.
my understanding all these last 11 years is wrong.
No, sir.
Okay,
No,
so can CRA money revenue free up North Miami City Council general fund revenue to be spent east of Biscayne because other things are being paid for west and central?
It would depend, and it would
I
depend.
get that it depends on exactly what.
It would
I'm not
depend
saying
on
that-
what element that is.
Right,
Yes.
but not theoretically, it can. I mean, that's why I voted for this 11 years ago and continue to be supportive of it.
Right.
I think the central and western districts of the city are most in need of removal of slum and blight.
Right.
East of the water, east of the boulevard, on the water, there's not nearly as much slum and blight.
Right.
So if the CRA can create a funnel stream of money that improves our west and central, I want to do that. And if at the same time in the North Miami City General Fund, it frees up money that we can also spend east of the boulevard, everybody wins. And if Solomia needs more X, Y, and Z because we've created this new committee, the good news is we can use that same CRA money there because they're in the CRA. They're the driver. I personally am in favor of leave it as is.
Okay, so it is my understanding that we are supposed to vote on this tonight, right? Okay,
I make a motion to approve the amendment with the 50% allocation.
Can I ask a question? Can you clarify what, I'm sorry, Councilman Keys, why you would make the 50-50? Because
Just based on our professionals, I'm adamantly opposed of keeping it as is. I do not feel we're going to be able to have enough money to take care of police, sidewalk repairs, code enforcement, just staff, financial staff. We're getting, Biscayne Landing, Solomia is getting ready to erect about 1 million square feet in commercial. We're going to have another 10,000 residents
new
there.
residents.
I do not think that there is going to be enough money in our general fund to free up
CRA?
to pay for
But the
that.
50,
CRA General Fund or City General
Yes.
Fund?
Either one, because I don't think the CRA is going to have the money to
did
maintain.
you make the full motion yet? I mean,
These
can we
two
ask, can we wait for her to make the full motion?
yes.
I think I personally think there's going to be adequate money for both the CRA and the revenue, the North Miami Revenue General Fund, going forward with the 50-50. I think the CRA will have plenty of money.
You got it, Madam
got it.
Yeah.
Clerk,
Yeah.
Deputy Clerk?
Just to clarify, Councilwoman Keys, it's 50-50 without the boundary modification.
Yes, and
All right.
I mean, it's so
Well-
similar, and I'm taking staff's recommendation only
I'm
because of
pretty
the sharing of the risk.
Yeah.
One neighborhood going up or down, like we did.
But,
have.
I'll be more inclined with Councilman Galvin's point, and I do see, if we're looking at the modification plan, not only will we be getting more, but both of these are risks. I don't think one is a little bit more than the other. If that's the case, then we might as well stay as is. It's almost where this board was set up to vote for the 50-50, because not only we have the consultants giving recommendation, but my idea is, I think the 95%, if we're going that route, not only is closer to what Galvin is saying, but we'll be more focusing on
Are
the
you
west side and,
Talking 95%.
and the central side of the city.
Talking 95% without Solomia?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
If, I can go either way, I don't,
Oh.
And have a, and
you know,
and
I
have
can
something
withdraw
to
my
say.
motion, let you make a motion, Councilman DeSumi.
And from what I understand, the reason why we had two and plan to choose the modification, the boundary modification and the 50-50 is because the consultant tell us that if we choose the first option, the county won't approve the CRA plan. That's from my understanding. But after Councilman Scott Galvin asks you the question, is the county specifically tell you if we choose the CRA the way it is, if they won't approve our plan, and you said no.
The county did not specifically tell us we would not approve the current methodology. They have told us that they want to see more TIF go back to the taxing authorities, and they've given us the parameters that they want for an extension of a CRA, which is to tell them how much implementation costs, which is that range of $160 to $195 million, and to come up with a methodology that funds that plan and returns the balance to the taxing authority. So even though they didn't come out and clearly just say, we will not approve the current methodology, I don't believe that the administration at the county would support an extension based on the current methodology.
But at the same time, if they did, it would be more money to the city.
No, it would be more money to the CRA.
The first,
CRA.
yeah, I'm talking about the CRA.
Yes,
If we choose the current plan.
yes, sir.
Okay,
There's
we do
much more
have a
money.
motion
Yeah.
on the floor made by Board
She
Member
withdraw a
Keys.
motion.
No,
I-
she
I
did
was
not. No.
just-
She already.
No, it's okay.
I'll
I'm-
make my motion 50%. Go ahead.
50%. I just need a second on that.
Now, the one comment that I wanted to make, just to put it out there, if we do go with the current methodology, I mean, the general fund will really suffer tremendously.
Yes, it will.
Yes.
It doesn't suffer though.
It
because
will
we're
suffer
still
tremendously.
We're still realizing.
But
tax
Mr.
revenue
Mr.
from
Mayor,
the city.
Look at the numbers.
but the reason why all the project that we have right now funded by the general fund, now we can put it on the CRA budget, and then we can have more money in the general fund to funded project on the east side, even if the east is not inside of the CRA boundary.
You're gonna break the city. The talk is Biscayne leaning Solomia, tax dollars, tax dollars. We will not see any of that tax dollars. It is all going to the CRA for projects. I do not think there's gonna be adequate money in our city. I think we're going to be broke. We're gonna be suffering. When you wanna buy that table for 10,000 and you wanna give that charity 10,000 and you wanna give 5,000, you're not gonna do that with the CRA.
So you're saying Solomia is gonna fail?
No, I'm not. I'm
So
saying,
is Solomia gonna fail or succeed?
I'm saying Solomia is going to succeed.
So if
and
it
I'm saying
succeeds,
that
all
we
the money
need-
comes and goes into
What
the
about
city.
the revenue?
If it goes
Let-
into the
let her-
CRA,
let-
the
let her
city is
finish.
going to fail. The city will fail.
The city's
And all
not
these,
gonna
No, let
pet-
her finish.
and all these
Let her
projects that,
finish, Mr.
all these
Galvin.
projects that you wanna do, other than, you can't repair sidewalks, you can't repair streets.
You're talking about two
Let her
monies.
finish.
CRA,
Let her
you're
finish.
talking CRA, okay? With the CRA, you take all the money that we have now, everything we get, all that money was coming in from Solomia, it's going into the CRA. The CRA will not allow you to fund existing police. No additional code enforcement. You cannot repair your streets, you cannot repair your infrastructure, you cannot spend it on your city buildings, and you can't give money away, you can't buy tables anymore with the CRA. No more parties, you can't have your festivals, you can't have your month-long festivals, because
Okay.
there's not gonna be any money in
I
the
think
city.
there's more
Okay,
to the
Councilwoman.
CRA and city than festivals and
Yes.
parties.
Well, you're not gonna have it anymore, because
Anything
there
else?
won't be enough money.
No, you have a motion.
Anything else?
Did it die or?
No, the motion.
No, did you second it?
Oh, the motion for the 50-50?
Yeah.
I thought you seconded it.
No, I did
No.
not, no.
I'm still waiting for a second, so if we do not have a second, then the motion fails.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we leave the CRA methodology as is.
Second,
I would, for discussion, or you just seconded?
second for
Yeah, for
discussion.
discussion.
Whatever you want.
I would definitely go with that, Councilman Galvin. My only fear, and I'm also fear with my own motion that I was about to put out, is,
Okay, I'm sorry, if it's
Yes.
seconded, do we have to go to the public?
no.
after your discussion, yes,
You
you would ask for
Okay.
public comment.
Yeah, my only fear is because I hear from the consultant that it's almost dead on arrival. I'm also, no,
he's not
I
saying that, 'cause
know,
I've
but,
spoken to Mr. Fernandez
but
directly today.
I've spoken to him and, but also which they kind of gave us the 95%, which kind of mirror yours, but that sounds like it's dead up on arrival also, because I'm only convinced the only thing that we have to do is the 50-50, which has failed, so I will ask the consultant.
You can always bring it back.
Bring what back?
The 50-50.
Oh, no, I'm not with the 50-50, I'm just saying.
If I may,
No,
No, hold on.
let us
Yes,
talk.
so please, so I want to vote for the leave as
As
is,
is.
but it sound to me, and you said this to me before, we're not gonna get a pass. But even my 95% doesn't really, I'm not convinced tonight after the consultants and everyone kind of say, you know, well, we partial. It's like, we don't want to say we Republican, we Democrat, but we doing voter registration. But at the same time, you got to do this to that benefit this party. That's what you did tonight. If you're impartial, you should have came here and give us a recommendation that says, this is where we are, and board make a decision. Either way will go, yes. But obviously, it's the 50-50, so let's go with the leave as is, I mean, and see what happens.
Councilman,
Yes, sir.
if we didn't believe that the modified boundary was a viable option, we wouldn't have presented it as an option.
But
It's
Kev,
viable, but it's not the only option.
It's not, sir. But Councilman, if I may, I'm not sure that George Fernandez was thinking about the current methodology when he spoke to you. We haven't spoken, we've had the comparison in the charts to the current methodology when we've met to the county, but the conversations when we've talked about options have been the 50% option and the boundary modification, because those are the two options that meet the criteria that the county has given us. So I think he probably wasn't thinking about the current methodology
Since
when
he's
you
not
asked him
here
that
and we
question.
didn't invite him, unfortunately, he's not able to speak for himself. But let me ask you this question. Whatever's approved tonight, how long is it before the county commission votes on it to approve it one way or the other?
We're looking at about a 4-month time frame.
Okay, that's exactly what Mr. Fernandez said to me today. So even if our leave it as is motion that I've made tonight fails and you learn tomorrow that the county's never gonna accept, you still have another 4 months to bring it back to us to be reconsidered. I think we made a pretty good strategic plan 11 years ago that was undermined by an economic collapse worse than the last 75 years. I think if we leave it as is, we still have the ability to remake this city and make it a jewel.
And I think we can get, if that's the decision that this board takes, we can get that feedback fairly quickly from the county in time for your next CRA board meeting.
Mr. Mr.
Unfortunately, I think one piece that is missing is we probably, looking backward, should have had maybe a special session with the county, to see, to feel their pulse, to see where they would be inclined to, and because the reason why I say so is because I would like for us to move in unison with the county. This is a relationship, okay, and we don't want the issue that we're bringing up tonight is not new. For months now, we've been hearing that the county is against, keeping it, as status quo for months. And actually, as a matter of fact, this methodology, the current one, has not been one of the topics of our discussion because we thought, it wasn't, no. So I think before we get to this point tonight, I so want this CRA issue to be put behind us because we've been working so ferociously on it. And I was thinking that tonight we were going to make a vote and we would be fine and put it behind and move on to other hurdles that we have to go through, as a municipality. And I just want us to do good, to look good in front of the county. They are I would like to say our father. We are their. Yeah, they are the county. They are the county. I mean,
Yeah,
but I don't want. They are the county, and we want to move.
in our interest.
But
You gotta know that.
But still,
They
we
their
want.
interest.
But still, we want to be we don't want to be antagonistic to them.
No.
And we don't want them to be antagonistic to us either. So we want to just work in collaboration with them, and see where we could better use our tax dollars. and so that we can move along. That's
Mr. Mayor,
pretty much it.
Before we take a vote, I would just like to read something to the public so they understand what we're voting on. And this year in 2016, if we go the way we are, the CRA will get $2,300,000, and the City of North Miami Revenue Fund will get $98,000. Next year, the CRA will get approximately $2.6 million. The city will receive in tax dollars $111,000. That is not enough to support our city.
But think of it this way,
That's coming
that's
from the
$2
sale
million,
of
that's
Yeah.
$2 million the city won't have to lend to projects within the CRA because the CRA is taking care of it.
But
We're
there's
really-
not gonna be
we're-
enough
we're
money
really-
for the city. There's
and-
not enough money to buy police cars. There's not enough money for more police code.
I bet you it is. I bet you
I
it is.
bet you it is.
I bet you it is.
Okay,
We're breaking our
let me ask
city.
something else
Not
because
breaking the city.
okay, because we raised the issue that we have about 3 to 4 months before the county can even look at this. Can we agree? Can we afford to not vote on it tonight and postpone it to?
Mr. May.
No, I'm just asking for different options.
In order to amend the redevelopment plan, specific notices had to be sent to taxing authorities, published in the Herald, which were, somewhat expensive. So I think tonight you at least need to approve the plan amendment and one of the methodologies of the three, so that we can at least, as the staff, with the consultant, go down to the county and start negotiating what you've approved.
So we have to
and
go
get you
with
some
one.
feedback on it.
Okay, so let's get cracking then, since we have to choose one of them. So we have a motion on the table to approve the amendments
comment?
with the second
My motion,
public comments
my motion, just to be clear, was to leave the CRA as is.
as is. Okay,
Approve the amendment to the plan, though, with the TIF
with the current methodology.
Yeah.
Correct, current methodology.
Okay, let's open it to the public now for a few minutes. Anyone who wishes to be heard on this item? I want to remind everyone, this is an item on the CRA, the Community Redevelopment Agency, not the regular council meeting agenda.
Good afternoon. Jacques Despinos, 95 Northeast, 134th Street. I'm some kind of leaning toward Congress, the Congressman.
Frederica Wilson took care of me, huh?
You only have 2 minutes because we really press for time.
And we have enough time to review the plans, because when the county, when I started with Scott 11 years ago, they give us the money to take care of the west of the track. But some way, somehow, Solomia is involved, and so we can understand that. But the money still have to spend on the blind side, like you said. So we have enough time to send it back to the county, and we have 4 months before we can sit down, review it, and negate it. Because I don't think so the money was given for the police. I remember I was sitting there and vote for it. There was no police included for it on the other side. But now, like Councilwoman Keys said, there's more need with the population will be rise up on the east side. We will need some need. We review it and present it to them.
There'll be no tax dollars.
Okay.
Thank you.
Clark Reynolds, 822 Northeast 125th Street. I am on the advisory board and have been there for quite a long time. I would be very, very cautious about thinking you're going to spend a lot of the money in the CRA on city services and replacing them. The law is very clear, the statutes are very clear about what you can use the money for and what you can't use the money for, and you can't use the money to substitute for city services. I mean, we're going to end up in a situation, possibly in a situation where, we're trying to be so straightforward and be really careful about the perception of the CRA, and I'm not sure that's going to be a good idea if we're sort of skirting the law, trying to use the money to supplement or supplant city services. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I need to make it incredibly clear, if I might, Mr. Chairman. I am in no way saying that we're supplanting city services, but if we're going to remove slum and blight, if we're going to provide affordable housing, if we're going to make the city better and stronger, then let's use the CRA revenue as it was originally intended. I was in the room 11 years ago when we made those votes. I know exactly how we originally intended. It was to take the money coming off of that project to improve the Central and Western District.
Okay,
That's what I'm suggesting tonight.
all right. Let's go for a vote.
We have a motion on the floor by Board Member Galvin to leave the plan as is with the current methodology and also to use the CRA revenue as it was originally intended. I had a second motion by Board Member Bieneme. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
Item fails, 2-3.
Where you got that fair?
I didn't hear the mayor vote.
I didn't,
You-
the
you
mayor,
know what?
There was only one no.
You didn't see,
No.
see two no.
There was
then you
only
say
one.
fair.
There were two no's.
Two,
Oh.
yeah.
So Mayor, how would you like to vote?
No, two no's mean 3 yes.
3 yes.
That's what it is. Can,
Okay, 3-2. Item passes.
So
3-2.
which item that just passed?
The
Leave
first
as
one,
is?
the current.
The current,
methodology.
okay, that's one that just passed.
Okay. Whole business, any reports from anyone? Motion to adjourn?
Yes, so moved.
Thank you. We'll take a brief recess before